I, 27F, got married 2 weeks ago. I planned the entire thing myself and received a lot of praise from my guests about how beautiful and perfect everything looked, which was nice. My stepsister, 26F, couldn't stand it, though, and had been telling everyone that I stole my ideas from her. She's always been jealous of me, so I wasn't surprised by this in the slightest, but I did feel really annoyed by it. Some family members of mine have a big mouth and started asking me if I really had stolen my ideas from my stepsister, which was really unfair since I hadn't done anything of the sort. My stepsister has a history of lying about me to make herself look better, and I'd had enough of it, honestly. My mother married her father when we were 16 and we've hated each other's guts ever since. I'd tried to be her friend at first, but she'd never accepted it and always tried to turn everything into a competition, which got under my skin. One time, she spread a rumor about me in high school that I used to hit on her boyfriend after I was picked at the cheerleading tryouts and she wasn't, just to get back at me. That led to almost a month of all the girls hating me and making fun of me except for a few. That's the kind of person my stepsister is. For so long, I'd always let things slide since I knew that she was doing it just to get on my nerves, and if I reacted badly then she'd win. But this time around, I couldn't just let it go because I'd spent weeks and weeks planning my wedding. She couldn't just swoop in and discredit me after all that I'd done to make my wedding as beautiful as possible. I know it was petty, but as soon as I got to know that she'd been telling people that I stole her ideas, I decided to call her up and give her a piece of my mind. I told her that she needed to stop saying it, since even though she knew that it wasn't true, she laughed in my face, called me a sore loser, and hung up. So I decided to expose her and her husband as the cheaters and liars that they really were to the rest of our family. For context, her current husband, 30M, used to be my boyfriend. When I was 23, I used to live with my parents and stepsister because I was saving money to move out eventually. That's when I met my ex-boyfriend at work and I fell in love almost instantly. However, he wanted our relationship to be top secret and didn't even allow me to tell my friends out of work, which, in hindsight, should have raised some red flags. After just 2 months of dating, I decided to bring him home to meet my parents, and obviously, my stepsister met him as well. I didn't notice it at the time, but she'd been overly flirtatious and cute around him, but I'd never even imagined that my ex would stab me in the back and cheat on me with her. I guess that's around the time that they started texting each other behind my back, but I was blissfully unaware of the sparks between them and continued to date him and fall for him even more. After almost a year of dating, I decided that I wanted to marry him and I proposed to him. It was unorthodox, but I loved him so much that I just couldn't wait around for him to propose to me and took it upon myself. So I took him out for a fancy dinner at a high-end restaurant and all of that, but at the end of the night, when I finally did pop the question, he said that he needed time to think about it. I wish he'd just broken up with me right then and there, but he dragged our relationship on for 3 more months instead, all the while cheating on me with my stepsister. I was upset that he'd rejected my first proposal, but I still stayed with him, hoping that I'd eventually be able to change his mind. We finally broke up when 3 months after my proposal, he confessed to me that he was in love with my stepsister and wanted to be with her instead. And as if that wasn't enough, he told me that she was 3 months pregnant, so she'd start showing in a couple weeks, which is why they decided to get married at the earliest as well. I was hysterical and got into a huge fight with my stepsister, but our parents intervened and forbade me from speaking about this as they were afraid of the family's image being ruined by this scandal, as my stepdad was reasonably popular. I had no option but to obey them since I was living with them at that point. They had a small and simple wedding ceremony in our backyard with a few close friends and family members, and then, my stepsister moved in with my ex. I didn't attend the wedding, obviously, and spent the entire week leading up to the wedding in a cheap motel room, doing nothing but drinking and eating. A few weeks after the wedding, I decided that I'd saved up enough money to be able to rent a place of my own and moved out as well. But that did nothing for my mental health and I went into a deep depression. I would just eat, drink, and sleep all day, and I'd even quit my job since I just couldn't bring myself to get out of bed anymore. However, I still did have a friend who was looking out for me, and that was my current husband. He and I had been close friends since high school, but I'd never seen him as a romantic figure because he was mostly known for being the class clown. For several weeks after the wedding, I skipped every party hosted by my friends and refused to respond to any calls or texts. I thought they'd forget about me since they were all busy with their own lives, but he didn't. He was the only one who bothered to find out where I lived from my parents and showed up at my house. He took care of me for the next few weeks even though I was mean and distant. He never left my side even for a second in those crucial few weeks and helped me get back on my feet. Hell, he even paid the bills for me since I didn't have any money after I quit my job. I literally owe my life to my husband and I'm going to be eternally grateful for what he did. Anyway, after a few weeks, I did end up telling him all about what had happened with my ex and my stepsister, and he consoled me then. We never formally got together, he simply moved in with me after a while and that was that. We never felt the need to address it, and even today, we joke that he never even asked me out. But whatever, that was what had happened, and I thought that it was about time that the rest of the family also found out about what had actually happened. I did discuss my plan to expose them with my husband first, though, and he was very supportive of it. He told me that after everything my stepsister and my ex had put me through, it was totally reasonable for me to want to tell everyone the truth. And so, a couple of days ago, I invited my entire family over to my house. I was extra careful to invite my stepsister in the sweetest voice so that she wouldn't suspect anything, and she totally fell for it as well. After everyone had arrived at my house, I addressed first the things that my stepsister had been saying about me stealing her wedding ideas. I reminded her that she'd never even had a proper wedding given the circumstances which she'd gotten married under. Some people laughed awkwardly, some looked uncomfortable, and some were plain confused, but I went on. I reminded her that since she's been accusing me of stealing her wedding ideas and making such a huge deal out of it, I should probably make an even bigger deal of what she did to me since she actually stole my husband. That earned a few gasps and shocked expressions from my guests, especially my parents and ex-boyfriend, who went red. I explained the entire story to the guests, who were, by now, looking as if they'd been served a treat on a silver platter, since this would be gossip fuel for a good year. After I was done with the story, there was a stunned silence where nobody knew what to say for a good 1 minute. However, after that, my stepsister got up and literally ran out of the house with her husband rushing behind her. Gradually, all the guests also left in silence. The last people to leave were my parents, who looked furious and even had the audacity to demand that I apologize to my stepsister for humiliating her in front of so many people. I told them I was going to do no such thing, since she'd tried to ruin my life more than once and she totally deserved this. My husband also told them that they had no right to tell me to apologize when they'd never told my stepsister to apologize to me, especially given the fact that what she'd done was way worse than what I'd done. He also told them off for being terrible parents who never even bothered to check up on me after I got cheated on. This led to an argument between them, and so I just told them to get out of my house if they were going to be disrespectful towards me and my husband. And that was almost 4 days ago. I haven't spoken to any of them since. I know for a fact that the rest of my family isn't speaking to my stepsister anymore, and she's been cut off by everyone. She's miserable since she's a social butterfly and can't stand the fact that nobody's talking to her anymore. A few hours ago, I received a text from my mom saying that she hoped I was happy now that I'd ruined my stepsister's life, since that's what I'd wanted all along. I mean, I'm okay with whatever's happening to my stepsister, since that's totally justified in my opinion. But my mother's accusation stings, since I thought that at least now, after all these years, she'd finally see my side and have my back. Now, I'm feeling like a jerk in this situation. I don't know, it sucks to be painted as the bad guy. So Ida for exposing my stepsister in front of my entire family? Update 1. My mother is still mad at me for doing what I did and is blaming me for ruining her daughter's life. I'm not even kidding, she's using these exact words to make me feel guilty. She's been texting me for a few days, demanding that I tell the rest of the family that I made all of it up just to get back at my stepsister because I was jealous. She's also told me that my stepsister and her husband are very upset with me because of what I did and are considering cutting me off, which makes no sense because we already don't speak except in public. We've never once reached out to each other unless we're at a family event, where we have to be civil to each other. In fact, the only reason she was even invited to my wedding was because my mother had forced me to invite her because it'd look weird otherwise. I don't know why exactly my mother thinks that I owe her an apology at all, but I've decided that I'm going to ignore all of it. I was quite upset for a few days that my own mother was taking my stepsister's side, but honestly, I'm used to it by now. I've told my husband about what's been happening, and he thinks that the best thing to do right now would be to just ignore her and let things go. And that's what I'm doing. I'm done with them. Update 2. So, 2 days have passed since the last update, and after posting that, I decided to block all of them. Only then did I realize how much this had been weighing on me, and I felt such relief when I finally cut them out of my life. I can't even believe that for so long, my mother forced me to pretend to be on good terms with my stepsister just so that people wouldn't judge them for failing as parents. They're the ones who were unable to make my stepsister a decent person, and yet, somehow, I was the one who had to suffer because of that. But yeah, anyway, I blocked them all and I thought that would be the end of it. However, last night, my mother came over and she seemed really disappointed. I didn't have anything to say to her, very honestly, and after almost 5 minutes of awkward silence, she started talking to me about how my actions had negatively impacted the family. I cut her off, saying that there was no family as such, at least for me. After she married my stepdad, it became very clear with time that she preferred my stepsister over me, and everything that she did was forgiven, but the same rules didn't apply to me at all. I told her how much she'd hurt me over the years and that I wasn't going to apologize or put up an act anymore. I was just done. She got really upset after my rant and tried to explain to me that the reason she distanced herself from me after her separation was because I reminded her too much of my dad. Which wasn't fair to me in the least, because of course I would remind her of my dad, but that was no reason for her to start treating me as if I was just my father's daughter and not hers, too. I told her that while I would try to understand her side of the story, I just couldn't forgive her that easily and needed time. But no matter what my equation with my mother was, I wasn't going to apologize to my stepsister or pretend to be sorry for what I did, and I made it known to her as well. She left looking really morose and disappointed, but that couldn't be helped. A day has passed since our last conversation, and while I have unblocked her, we haven't yet spoken. Update 3. 1 week has passed since my last conversation with my mother and she hasn't reached out again since, so I'm guessing she's not sorry. Which is fine by me, honestly. I've come to terms with the fact that she prefers my stepsister and that's just how it is. Nothing I say or do is going to change it anymore. But my stepsister hasn't moved on from what I did yet and has taken to badmouthing me to all our relatives yet again. She's been telling everyone that her husband cheated on me only because I was a toxic psycho and he found her company peaceful. Apparently, she's told people that I used to emotionally manipulate my ex into staying with me every time he tried to break up, which is part of the reason that he ended up cheating on me. Another reason was that I was pushing him to get married to me even though he'd told me that he wasn't ready yet, which scared him. Now obviously not one word of any of that is true, but my relatives are now divided about whom they should believe since my stepsister, unlike me, is a very convincing liar. One of my cousins has been keeping me updated with whatever lies she's been spreading about me, and it's honestly just outrageous that she's trying to make me out to be the liar here when we all know what kind of person she is. My mother is not going to intervene at all. That's something I'm sure of, and neither am I going to ask her to, because she's just going to refuse to say anything to her favorite daughter anyway. But I'm not going to let this one slide either, because if she can go so low then I can definitely go lower. I've blocked her on all social media, but thankfully, I know a lot of her co-workers and friends, and I'm going to make sure that everyone gets to know what kind of person my darling stepsister is. It's petty and cruel, and I'm glad I can finally stop pretending that I care about her or her feelings, since she's never cared about mine. And even my husband feels that whatever I'm doing, no matter how petty and mean it seems, all comes from a place of justified anger. I was forced to suppress my anger and resentment towards my stepsister for so long that it was bound to bubble up and come out in destructive ways sometime or the other, and he thinks that it's better now than never, since she's the one who's been pushing and pushing me for a reaction for a long time anyway. So I've decided that I'm going to expose what she did to me to every single person who knows her this time, and it certainly won't be pretty. Update 4. So, I did it. I posted everything that my stepsister had done to me with proof, since I did have a few screenshots of texts between me and my ex, and even some taunting texts that my stepsister had sent to me over the years to show that I wasn't lying. I posted it yesterday, and my phone has been totally blowing up with notifications because of the sheer number of people who have been texting me. To my surprise, it wasn't just my relatives who reached out to me, but also my stepsister's co-workers and some of her acquaintances had sent me texts detailing their own bad experiences with my stepsister. Apparently, she's quite the office flirt and flirts with every guy regardless of whether they're married or not. And as if that wasn't messed up enough, she also treats other women like absolute crap and is always saying mean things about her so-called friends behind their backs. So far, I've learned that she's a flirt, a gossip, and a backstabber, and the list just keeps growing. My stepsister is furious that I went public with this information and has been trying to get through to me and has made several different accounts to get me to harass me into taking my post down. But she doesn't scare me in the slightest, so the post is still up. I'm sure she's reporting the post as well, so maybe Facebook will take it down eventually, but I for sure won't be deleting it. My mother is also mad at me and has made it a point to tell me that while she'd expected me to deal with this like a mature and grown woman, I'd let her down and act like a complete fool. She also told me that my stepdad was very pissed off about the kind of stunts I'd been pulling off, since it was affecting his reputation among his friends as well, so he wanted me to publicly apologize to everyone and delete my posts. And if I didn't do that, they'd be forced to cut me out of their lives as well, and that'd mean my entire inheritance would go to my stepsister. It's just funny that they think threatening to cut me off is going to be effective in any way whatsoever, since I'm the one who blocked them first, so obviously I don't care whether or not my stepdad wants me in his life. I'll be a little disappointed about my mother cutting me off, but like I said, I've accepted that she doesn't love me as much as she adores her stepdaughter, and I'm okay with it. As for the inheritance, I earn well enough to support myself, and so does my husband, so it's not like we're worried about the money. Moreover, when my dad passed away a few years ago, he left me with way more money than my stepdad would have, so I'm not particularly worried about losing out on the inheritance, quite honestly. Update 5. 2 days since I posted, and holy crap, that one post ended up opening up Pandora's box. First off, my parents obviously cut me off when I told my mother that I wasn't going to take that post down. She tried to convince me that losing my relationship with my parents wasn't worth it, and that taking revenge on my stepsister shouldn't be my sole motive. I reminded her that I hardly even had a relationship with them anymore, so I was okay with losing whatever little I had if that meant I could get back at that evil demon, which led to a fight and ended with her blocking me everywhere like I'd done to her first. It stung, but whatever. And then, yesterday, I got to know from my other relatives that my stepsister and her husband were headed for divorce. I was very confused as to what exactly had changed in a night, and after some digging, I found out through my cousin that apparently, one of her male coworkers who'd seen my post had decided to actually text her husband. The coworker had sent him multiple screenshots of my stepsister trying to flirt with him, and since he was already married, he was pretty uncomfortable. Obviously, this didn't go down well with my stepsister's husband. They got into a huge fight and decided to end their marriage. He's filed for divorce and single custody of their son, which is sad for the kid, but honestly, I'm happy that they're both finally being punished for whatever they'd put me through. I've obviously cut myself off from the situation entirely, and I guess my stepsister has learned her lesson now since she's kept her mouth shut after that post. It's crazy how one decision of mine to expose my stepsister ended up ruining her marriage and quite possibly her relationship with her son as well, but I don't feel guilty about it at all. She brought this all onto herself. From what I know, she's moved back in with my parents because she's facing flack at work as well because of her behavior, so she might even have to quit her job too pretty soon. I'm relieved that I hopefully won't have to deal with her and her craziness for the foreseeable future, and just to ensure that I'm as far away from her as possible physically as well, my husband and I have decided to leave for our honeymoon this week itself. We're going to go on a Europe tour and I'm super excited for what's in store for us. I'm going to put all this dramatic nonsense about my stepsister, my parents, and my family out of my head for the next few weeks and try to enjoy my life to the fullest. And hopefully, when I come back, I'll be a better and more free person with less emotional baggage. Truth be told, now that I'm finally done with my family, I feel a lot less bogged down already.